Well, hey everybody, welcome to the show. Man, it's so good to be back. Ooh, got the summer break in, feeling good, relaxed, rejuvenated, and dare I say, refreshed. You like that? That was a little alliteration for you.
Hey man,
That was good. That was a good Baptist alliteration, man.
it it wasn't bad. It
Thank
wasn't
you.
bad.
Off the cuff too. I mean, hey man,
Yeah,
once
yeah.
you're
I
Baptist.
was waiting to hear rejoicing. Um,
Ooh, that's too Baptist.
or that's
That's too much. Yeah, you just went a little too. Yeah, that's a brown suit song leader. Uh, Baptist.
yeah, with a brown tie too.
That's right. Don't
Yellow
bring your
shirt,
drinks
brown tie.
in the sanctuary Baptist.
That's right.
That's those folks. Anyway, oh boy, out the gate we're already offending people. It's a strong start post summer break, but welcome to the show. We are so
Hey,
excited to be back and to have you guys with
on,
us.
only the new people will be offended because they'll know. Everybody else knows that we are equal opportunity offenders. Baptist,
That's true, man.
Presbyterians,
Oh, Lutherans,
Lutherans. It
yeah,
doesn't matter. Like
yeah,
we offend
especially the
everybody.
Methodists. As of late, they get a little extra,
Independent
uh,
Christian Church, like
oh
we
yeah,
throw
man, all
shots at
those
everybody.
guys. Yeah, the Independent Christian Church, the non-denominational denomination,
Yes.
as it's known. So not even a good one too. They don't even like have a central location or collect money. You guys are doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong, man. You're not making a dime off this. Uh,
That's
anyway,
good.
oh boy. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. Yeah, start over. Yeah. And I'm joined here in the studio, the SimplifyChurch.com studio, with my man Greg. He's looking good, about as tan as he was last time we talked.
About as
Um,
tan as I ever get.
yeah, that's fine, man. But it is really good to see you, man, and to be back. Just talking life, talking ministry about the things that everyday pastors wrestle with, and hopefully have a great conversation on tap today. But before we get into all of that, I just want to know, man, like, how was your summer break? What did you do? Where did you go? Did you travel the world? What happened?
Well, we did the world tour of um the Village of Cultures at the State Fair in Illinois, if that counts as a world
The
tour.
Village of Cultures.
Yeah, that's like all the different world foods. They have the little stands and you can just go around and get cuisine from all over. So we
Huh.
did that. That was our world travel, I guess, for the for the summer. Um,
At the Illinois State Fair.
yes, at the Illinois State Fair.
Interesting.
I think I sent you pictures of the butter cow.
You did send me a picture of the butter cow, which I was so thankful for. And
We
it
might have
took
to
me a
put that in the
second
show
too.
notes
I think so. We'll upload that.
um,
I'll find a way to upload that. We'll
because
maybe post to the Facebook page or something. So
everybody needs to see the butter cow.
yeah.
High value tax dollars at work in the great state of Illinois for the butter cow.
Well, I don't think anyone's ever said that about the state of Illinois, but and meant it. But
Well, you know,
what's the weirdest food they had in the little culture food circle there?
um, you know, I don't know. Most of them are pretty straightforward. Like probably the wildest, uh, like supplies used to make the food. Like there were a couple of Cajun places, so they had like gator,
Okay.
and a few other things, but nothing like super weird or out of the ordinary. But there's a fantastic little place that does they actually do a Greek horseshoe,
Oh, there you go. And now, for those
which
that aren't part of the regional custom of
right.
Illinois, what could you explain a horseshoe, please?
Yeah, so the horseshoe is a heart attack looking for a place to happen. Um, I mean,
That's a beautiful description. Yeah, that's
it really
perfect.
is. It's like bread or Texas toast with some kind of a meat, whether it's a burger or like some folks do it with shawarma or some other meat, and then covered in French fries, covered in cheese sauce, topped with other things. Just this mess on a plate. Um, and everyone should eat one or 10.
Yeah. Well, okay. I remember my first and last horseshoe I ever had. It wasn't bad. It was different. It was a little weird, but sounds like you
It's
had a good
different.
time though.
Yeah, it was good. Break was good. Got to spend some time relaxing with some family and
That's always good.
piddling around at the house, which is nice when there's not something broken that you have to fix and you can just kind of hang out and do
Yeah.
what you want to do. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
fantastic. How was the beach?
Oh man, the beach was it was calling and I answered. And we had a lovely meeting. It really was,
Good.
man. We had a great time. Weather was, I mean, it was, it's hot as to be expected, but we had a fantastic time. Went down with some friends. We, went to the beach every day, hung out at the pool quite a bit, ate too much food, and you know, man, we just had a wonderful time. Relaxed,
Good.
got a gnarly sunburn. Nursed that back to health, and we're back in the saddle. I miss it. I every time I go there, I get so excited and I'm so pumped leading up to it, and then on the way home, I'm just sad. But
I
it's
got you.
okay.
I got you.
It's
Well,
okay. There'll be
have
another one in the future.
have y'all started the school year yet?
Yeah, we're back in the saddle with school stuff, and the kids are off to the races. I got my youngest daughter was starting a bunch of Latin stuff over the last couple weeks, and so I've been hearing a lot of
All right.
frustration around a dead language in my house. So there's
I
been
understand.
that. But no, it's been good, man. Like
All right.
everybody's back in sort of in the pocket and trying to get this next school year started, and of course, work and family and everybody's off to the races. So and that's not just true for me or you. That's true for everybody in ministry, right?
That's right.
So for especially guys that are leading churches or are on teams, you folks you're staring down the barrel of what is usually the most exciting time of the year. Everybody loves the holidays, everybody loves Easter, but really it's the fall where you get to reimagine. You're working through your budget, you're working through initiatives, you're working through things that you're excited about, and you're looking at the calendar and you're kind of getting back into things. And this time of year, while man, yeah, of course we want to be talking about the new initiatives, the new programs, the new ministry launches, you know all that stuff is fantastic. But there are also opportunities that the fall provides to reimagine some things within like how you function culturally
Yep.
that can be so profitable and can have such a powerful impact on the not only the success of your team but the growth of your church. And it's in areas that we don't often think about. So that's kind of what we're getting into today is how do we structure great meetings for our staff, and understanding that the amount of meetings that we have, the types of meetings that we have, the location of those meetings, the people that are involved in those meetings, all of that contributes to our overall staff culture and in leadership culture, regardless of the size of staff that you have. It all contributes, and that has a huge impact in how ministry is done and how it's
Yeah.
communicated and how staff feels with regard to really all the things that they're trying to get accomplished. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I think as we consider those realities, um, we need to be willing to allow for not only for culture shift,
Yep.
but to allow for our people who are part of our team um, to have meetings that fit them.
Oh, that's good, man. Yeah.
Where we're not asking them to come into a meeting with regularity that doesn't fit them.
Mm, mm,
Whether it's okay, the level of conversation that we're going to have is just going to be like outside of their scope and outside of their ability to track, because they are very detail oriented, and we're talking big picture.
hmm
Like knowing who you're inviting to the table and when you're inviting them to the table, and ensuring that you are whenever you can building meetings that will benefit the people who are part of it, and not just, well, we got to have this meeting, so let's have it,
Right.
and get everybody there, and let's just kill all the birds with one stone, trying to scattergun this thing and do everything at once. I found that really is unhelpful. I don't know if you've experienced that or not, but
Oh
trying to
man.
have one meeting that could have been 5 emails and
Yeah.
a hallway conversation probably is better than, all right, let's go sit in a room for 3 hours
Yeah.
and not get things done.
Yeah, especially if you're talking about things within the life or the scope of the church that has no direct impact on your ministry. And so, I mean, really, you're coming in, you're sitting down, and you're just sitting quietly and you're listening. And while some of the information may be helpful, you don't have any ability to impact that. You don't have any ability to contribute to
Mhm.
it. And so you're just kind of listening. And I think for a lot of churches, if you really talked to, and really in a big way, this has a lot to do with multi-staff environments, but if you kind of polled staff, I think what you're suggesting is a very popular and common feeling and conclusion that a lot of people get to, which is, man, this really could have been an email. This really wasn't for me. And so there's this tension of we need to have meetings because we need to be able to communicate. We have to be able to work through things. But those meetings need to be efficient and they need to be effective,
For sure.
and they have to have a place that makes sense for those in attendance to fit. Man, Greg, for your church and like especially in your seat, what do like if you could just, I don't know, kind of unpack briefly what types of staff meetings, administrative meetings, what kind of
Sure.
meetings do you guys have, that that your staff's expected to be at?
Yeah. So I'm kind of the king of meetings, but I try to do them in various ways with different groups. So like because I'm the worship and the admin guy, um our preaching pastor and I have a weekly update that usually is a few hours on Monday afternoon,
Okay.
where it's, hey, we review yesterday, we talk about any number of things that are coming as far as like, okay, here's where the new sermon series is going, here's how that impacts worship, hey, are we looking at baptism, all those kind of nuts and bolts things that go around sermon and Sunday service, and then kind of the follow-ups of, hey, here are things that you need to know, that don't, like, you don't need to do anything with, but I just need you to know about them so that you don't get caught off guard kind of updates.
Yeah.
And then some more long range. Okay, so let's talk about groups. Let's talk about budget. Let's talk about, and start getting those frames going. And so we try to do that every Monday. And that's probably the longest meeting that we have all week. Others are just kind of passing in the hall, whatever. We don't do a traditional staff meeting.
Oh, interesting.
Um,
Okay.
um, we're probably going to add one back. We used to do one every week, but we found it was unhelpful. But when we were doing that, we also had a full-time secretary. And so it was more for her to know all of the things that were going on. Everybody could give her their calendars and those kind of things. And since we don't do that anymore, we don't have a full-time secretary. We have somebody in the office in the mornings. We all just kind of put our own stuff on the calendar and we share that. And so we don't need to do that a ton, but we're working toward probably going back to a monthly kind of update with our full team. But then I have a regular connect with our kids ministry director at least one day a week. She either pops in my office or I pop in her office for 10 minutes or so and just say, okay, how's it going? Anything you need? What's coming? What do you need to know about? What do I need to know about? That kind of touch base stuff. Where she's not in a meeting for 2 hours that she doesn't want to be in,
Yeah, it's true.
and where she's just listening to us talk about stuff that doesn't impact her or her ministry in any way, kind of thing. And then I also lead most of our meetings when it comes to administrative kind of functions in the church. So whether it's a budget team meeting or a a gathering of team leaders, or like, most of that stuff falls to me to structure and organize, and I try to develop those based on who's going to be at the table,
Okay.
and be ready where everybody has a meaningful piece to bring, and not, okay, well, I'm the facilities, you know supervisor, but why am I here?
Yeah.
I want to make sure that when we gather those groups together, that they they have a reason for being there, and that we make it worth their time and their effort.
That's good, man. And I think it's interesting because there are probably a lot of churches that are right around your size that have, the same amount of staff equivalency and, are probably looking at their meeting structure and thinking, man, how do we get more effective? How do we get leaner with our meetings and more efficient with them? And I think it's so good to hear different perspectives on that, right? There are so many, I think, ingredients that go into creating a great like staff meeting culture.
Sure.
And one of the pursuits I think that we have to have, especially if we are in a spot where we're leading ministry, is I think this is an area where we have to consistently pursue getting better.
Mhm.
I think it's really easy to fall into a rut of this is how we do meetings because this is how we've always done meetings, and really we're not seeing them as a time to pursue growth, to pursue change. And so it's just, a lot of times these meetings just become very, informational, or like basic planning, and we miss some really great ingredients.
For sure.
And so I love hearing like the perspective that, your church brings to the table. And I think all of this is about understanding that everybody's got their own culture, everybody's got their own process for how they do these things. But one of the things that we can encourage all of us toward is man, pursuing, constantly evaluating and trying to improve our meeting culture. And so, a couple things to be thinking about is like kind of what you said, man. I love that. Is first and foremost is what kind of meeting is this? What kind of meeting are we having? Is this a a planning meeting? Is it a all staff? Is it a check-in meeting? Is it a like you said, we kind of review things that have happened and then we talk a bit, is this a strategic meeting? Like, what are we doing? I think that's an important ingredient. And there are some great questions, and I didn't come up with these questions, but when you're talking about reviewing things that have happened, or you're evaluating as a part of your meeting, evaluating the Sunday service, evaluating a big event that just went down, there are some questions that have been developed. And I wish I knew who attribute them to, because they've been around so long when it comes to walking through in that review process, that I don't know who they are attributed to. But if you really like them, we'll just say that I came up with them. That's fine. If you really like them, if you don't like them, just it's just part of the zeitgeist.
They were mine.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
mine.
Those were Greg. Come on, Greg. But first thing was like, what was right? When you start thinking about, as you're reviewing, as you're unpacking services and events, what was right, what was wrong, like let's explore the positive, let's be honest about the negative, and let's identify the things that we're missing. Because generally for me, when I'm evaluating, like in a moment of something going on, it becomes super clear to me of like, no matter how much planning I did, something got missed.
Yep.
And it's like, oh man, what was missing? What would have made this better? What would have really taken this over the top? And then one question that I love, because it's rarely asked, and it's a chance for people to really be honest, is what was confusing? What was confusing about what we did? What was confusing about the service, or about how we communicated something, or the way things moved or flowed? Was there something confusing? And sometimes, those answers are simple, and sometimes it was nothing. Nothing was confusing. Seemed like everything went really, really well.
Yeah.
But it's good to keep that rhythm. And so, determining what kind of meeting we're having, and then asking the right questions in those meetings, is important. I think also, something you hit on, Greg, and when you talked about whose meeting is this, who's supposed to be here, who's in charge of it, what kind of structure is it going to have, and so just making sure you got the right people around the table. But one thing I want to ask you about, because I'm curious to get your thoughts as someone who is such a checklist guy, and as you said, the king of meetings. One ingredient I think that is paramount to creating a great structure to our staff meetings is this idea of being predictable. I think there's a lot of merit to predictability in this, with regard to when you start, when you stop, the flow of the meeting, the things that you're going to be discussing and going over, consistency in that these meetings are happening when they're supposed to happen and they're not getting moved or changed.
Right.
What do you think about do you see, is it an overstatement to say that predictability is important in these meetings, or is it just is it a minimal contributing factor? Where would you place a value on that?
So I think, especially when it comes um, to your staff, I think it's huge to say,
Okay.
if it's a meeting that everybody needs to be at, it's at this time on this day every time. And these are going to be some of the things, and you just know we're going to hit them in this order. So that there is that, hey, I know what to expect and I know what's going to be asked of me, and I'm able to handle that and be ready for it. Because I think there's nothing worse from a staff member's perspective than to have your calendar blocked out, and you've blocked out already a time in a day for a staff meeting or a whatever meeting, only to have somebody need to move it. And then you're playing musical calendar chairs amongst your team to see, okay, well, where can we fit it in? But I've already got 3 other appointments at that, in that window. I can't.
Yep.
And so in my mind, it's almost better to just cancel it than to move it.
Yeah. Boy, that becomes, an exercise in futility sometimes.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, I think setting it and being consistent is huge. Now, I do think when you're talking about other teams or other kind of gatherings, I don't know that having the consistent day and time of the week is as important, with the shift of everybody has their calendar with them all the time.
Yes.
With the opportunities to send requests for people to be part of a meeting where they can see it right there on their calendar and hit yes or no. Like, I think that has shifted some of the, well, this group always meets on the second Tuesday. I don't know how important that is when it's just a kind of a round table conversation. I'm a part of a pastor's group, and we have a meeting, but it's, it moves from time to time when and where it is. I don't know how important that is, but for your staff team, I think it's really important to have that level of consistency. And I would go a step further and say, whether it's a staff or any other kind of meeting, have an agenda.
Oh yeah, man, that's good.
And share that agenda ahead of time, even if it's always the same.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to be blindsided. Like, I have this deal. When somebody calls the church and wants to have a meeting, my secretary asks them what they want to talk about.
Yes.
And if they can't say what they want to talk about, I don't set that meeting. And then they can call me and they can tell me what they want to talk about, or they can stop me in the hallway and tell me what they want to talk about. But I'm not going to get blindsided. Well, I just want to talk to you. And then you come with your list of grievances.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you have grievances, just tell me you have grievances and I can be ready to handle that. And I think the same thing is true with our teams. Like, let's just be transparent with them, tell them what we're going to talk about, let them be well prepared for it, and then stick to it.
Man, I really love that. Just the idea too, because some people are thinking, well, man, it's the same agenda every time. And it's like, yeah, that's okay. But, communicating what that agenda is to avoid the blind side, man, that's super nice. And then just, being kind and sending out reminders, especially if you're rotating some responsibilities. I think additionally to that, man, is the idea of action steps. So many times people go to meetings, we talked about a bunch of stuff. We all came out of that knowing that some things were going to happen, but really unclear of who is in charge of doing what. And then we get back to the next meeting and it's like, oh, well, these things come up again. And it's like, what, man, I thought we just talked about that last month. Yeah, well, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. Oh, yeah. And then now it's, oh man. So like having clarity around, what we're talking about, what we're trying to accomplish, and what action steps need to be taken help provide great clarity for accountability. And they also direct how whatever follow-up meetings need to occur go. I think that's super important. I think just having this checklist in mind is really helpful.
Yeah. And I would also say, and it's a trap that I can fall into if I'm not careful. Sometimes there are so many things that need to be discussed,
Oh man,
but we feel like either we have to hit them all
yes,
or that we have to come to a solution or an answer to the question at hand before we move on to something else. Sometimes it's beneficial just to say, we're going to take 10 minutes and talk about upcoming things, or we're going to take 15 minutes and we're going to talk about this one thing. We may not come to a solution, but after 15 minutes, we're going to talk about something else.
yeah. Oh man,
Because
Lord, yeah,
we have other things to do. And I can't tell you how many meetings I've walked out of, and they've been ones that I've set the agenda for. And I walk out saying, we only got to half of them
yes,
because we got stalled out on this. And it was an important thing, but we probably didn't need to have 2 years calendared out in that one ministry in that meeting.
yeah. I mean, you can if you get stuck on something and say, man, it is obvious that we need to spend some more time on this. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a meeting where we just talk about this particular item,
Yep.
and I'm going to get a few of you together to help us, kind of brainstorm the right solutions. And
Yep.
then boom, it still communicates that this conversation is important, and that it has merit, and there's a place for it, and the people that are passionate about it deserve to be at the table, but not this one, not right now.
Right.
We got to move forward. So we don't, yeah, to your point, man, because it creates frustration, especially if you're having a conversation about something that like you have no like say over or impact, that it doesn't affect your ministry at all, and you're just like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, and then you start drifting off into scrolling Facebook land, or sending texts. But I think overall, one of the things that makes a great meeting culture and structuring great staff meetings for your staff is placing a high value of like why we're having these meetings, and ultimately the resources that are being utilized to execute. I heard a guy from a conference years ago was talking about one of the things that he did in when he stepped into a seat of kind of revitalizing the way that the overall staff culture functioned at his church, was that he calculated the entire salary being paid of everyone who was in attendance at that staff meeting, and then he took that total number and he divided it down to like an hour, basically. So like it's costing the church X amount of money per hour for us to be in a meeting, and it was like $6,000 or something. I mean, it was crazy how much money was being spent collectively on that 1 hour. And he said, so if we're trying to be good stewards of the resources that God has entrusted to us, let's ensure that the meetings that we have are as efficient and cost effective, as well as informative and action oriented as they can be. And I thought, oh man, that's a game changer when you start thinking of your meetings differently in that. And so that then begins to, and again, you can go too far with that because you can be like, well, I don't man, you almost get too scared to have meetings
Right.
where there's a little more relaxation and fun. But it's just understanding how we prioritize those things. But I think we have to place a value on these meetings cost the church resources,
Yep.
and that's a good thing. But
Mhm.
I think we have a responsibility to honor that.
For sure.
As I've been thinking a lot about meetings too, something I find interesting is there's this new trend of when churches are gathering, and their staffs are having these various meetings, that we're kind of reimagining like what meetings are happening throughout the week, and they're being more strategic with it. And so there are those review meetings, there are the quick update meetings, there are meetings where no one sits down. We're just going to stand for 15 minutes so that it communicates a level of urgency and quickness. And then
Right.
and then it gets even more defined into there are programming meetings, there are strategic meetings, and there are production meetings. And I find a lot of value in that structure. I don't know if that hits where you're at, but I love when we can get granular on these specific types of meetings and who's in the room,
Right.
because I think we can get way more creative, and I think we can get way more intentional by giving space to those things.
Yeah, and I think what you're kind of describing is what somebody else would call team huddles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's something that we're trying to introduce here, even like on Sunday mornings or on ministry days, of saying, hey, we want you to get everybody on your team together for just 5 minutes and remind them what they're doing and why they're doing it, why it matters,
Yeah.
and then send them out to do their job. And I think even as a staff team, that can be super helpful to have those. Hey, it's 5 minutes first thing in the morning. I just want you to know what you're doing. It matters. Don't forget, here are a couple of things that are coming. And yeah, in 2 weeks, we have an all-day staff infection. So make sure it's on your calendar. Let's go.
I think you meant staff meeting. I think that's what
I'm
you
sorry.
meant
I'm
to
sorry. I
Yeah.
meant staff
Ooh,
meeting.
yeah.
My mistake.
Boy,
Freudian
there's
slip.
a staph infection.
Um,
Bunch of dudes in the car right now going, "Amen, man. Amen."
I think the other thing that shifts the culture of your meetings from being either terrible meetings or okay meetings to great meetings is when different areas of ministry are kind of just sharing what God is doing or what's coming for them. For you as somebody who's not part of that ministry to say, how can I help?
Yeah.
What does it look like? How can I come alongside and help in the kids ministry? How can I come alongside and help with that thing that our students are doing? How can I help? And if we're asking that question, then it not only eliminates some of the silos that we're really good at building
Yes.
in ministry life, but it also says we're in this together, and I'm for you. And so, yeah, I would be happy to not have another meeting and instead be helping you do whatever would be helpful
Mm.
in your ministry. So, what is that thing? In the skill sets that I have that would help you do your thing.
Man, that's good, dude.
And I think that is a huge culture shift.
Yep.
And it is a huge thing when we begin to say we want to go from having okay meetings or maybe even honestly bad meetings to having great meetings. I think that's a huge shift. And I think the other thing it says is I'm not too busy.
Mm.
Like we're all busy. But if we're willing to say, but I'm not too busy to be engaged in this.
Right.
Because we're on a team together. That makes huge impact. And especially as the primary meeting caller, when I can do that, then whenever I say, hey, could we get together and chat about XYZ later? I have some of that credit in the bank to say, hey, I wasn't too busy for you. If you could free up your calendar to not be too busy for me, that'd be incredible.
That's it, man. That's it right there. Wow. Yeah, the incredible culture shift that can happen when we start seeing each other as part of the team, and that what we're doing isn't more important than what someone else is doing.
Yep.
And that it's all important. So let's share the weight of that. When possible, when responsible. Like, you don't necessarily need me helping out in a preschool classroom. I don't know if that's good for anybody. Certainly not good for Jesus. But I don't know who that's good for. But man, other parts of, like you had some tech questions or there's something I can do behind the scenes or design you a graphic, oh man, I'd love to do that for you.
Right.
I think those are great ways to figure out how to help each other. And I think at the end of the day, man, it comes back to what we started with is like staff culture matters. And a big part of staff culture are the meetings that take place.
Mm-hmm.
And so making those as good, effective, efficient, and resourceful as possible will go a long way into changing not only the culture of your staff toward a really positive outcome, but have such a positive impact on your church as well. Churches that really thrive often thrive because the staff has a bond. There's a good relationship there, and they see that. They see it. It's undeniable. They see that love for each other and care for each other, and that kind of cross ministry involvement. And so these are just some things that, I mean, really, this whole episode, 35 minutes, well, maybe 25, a little bit of catch up on the front end, but at least 25 minutes of this has been solid, great content, of some wonderful ingredients.
And if you listen to it at 1.5 times,
oh man, yeah,
it'll be fantastic.
That's a great recommendation. Who doesn't want to do that? It's a great recommendation.
And we sound fantastic at 1.5 times.
Yes,
not quite.
Yes,
not quite Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Yeah, but certainly more effective in my rambling. But we're just trying to give you a list of ingredients. Do with it what you want, but I'm convinced if you take some of these ingredients, you'll bake up something real nice for your team. And I think that's our goal for you, as to how we can help resource and equip you. Man, we love being able to do this and resource everyday pastors just like yourself. Lots of other resources we have for you too on the simplifychurch.com website. A lot of free downloads, different resources, ways to get more strategic with your team. There's a free download there for you as well that you can talk about with your team. We'd love to connect with you either on social media or through email. podcast@simplifychurch.com is a great way to do that. And we always love to hear from you in terms of how you're enjoying the show. And so, man, rate, review. Those are good gifts that you can give back to us that we'd always appreciate. But man, we're back in the saddle for the fall. Can't wait for the future episodes. We've got some great guests coming on in the coming weeks to talk about some incredible resources and collaborations that we have with some fantastic organizations that also care about everyday pastors. And so we'll be talking more about those in the weeks to come. But it's going to be an exciting season for us here at the Simplify Church podcast, and hope you'll join us and invite your friends to do so as well. And as always, Greg, you are the man. You're a wizard. You are a ministry wizard, Gregory, and I'm so thankful for you.
I'm something.
I'm something. He's always so sad when I compliment him. So sad. Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.